Hello there, my beautiful, lovely, talented, and delightful internet friends. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me here today on Trauma Talk. Today, we are going to be talking about a fellow YouTuber's story here on YouTube, Jessie Paege. She seems like an absolute delight. I've watched a few of her videos before, and her video entitled "I Am a Survivor" popped up on my page earlier this week and I watched it. In this video, she very bravely tells the story of experiencing sexual assault and abuse and shares her experiences. First off, I want to start by saying that I cannot applaud you, Jessie, enough for doing this. I know that that is so hard. I know it's so hard to put this stuff into words anyways, and to do that for an audience where you are then up for comment and people can say whatever they want takes a lot of guts. But I do think it's really important if you're in a place where you can safely do that for yourself. So way to go telling your story. So what we are going to be doing today is not commentary on what she said, is not critique obviously or criticism. I want to talk about two comments that she made during the course of her video that I thought were important to talk about. These are things that I have felt myself, that I have blamed myself for, that I've spent a lot of time processing through, and I wanted to just share a couple pieces of wisdom, a couple thoughts from my perspective. If they resonate with you, fantastic. If they don't, understandable. If you have not seen her video, she describes experiencing sexual assault from a male who she was with for the first time, her voice not being respected, her choices not being respected, her body not being respected, and her no not being respected, which is heartbreaking to hear. That should never happen to anyone. Jessie, if you ever see this video, I am so sorry that that was done to you. I'm so sorry that that is something you had to experience. No one should ever have to go through that. No one deserves that. And she talks about in this video that she knew this person, that she was dating them, and that she had never heard of anything like this happening before. And I cannot tell you 100% what she meant by that comment, but what I took it to mean was she's not heard of sexual assault in this context being someone you know, in a dating relationship, you know, already having kind of established communication with them, and then this horrible thing happens. In the video, she talks about not recognizing it as sexual assault for quite some time because she just didn't know, and it took talking about it and talking with friends to realize the depth of what had really happened. First of all, that is super common, not to realize that you've experienced sexual assault or abuse or trauma for quite some time. That's our body's natural defense mechanisms, and also sometimes we just don't have the information to know. I made a whole video talking about that a couple weeks ago, which I will link up above. But I want to talk about this idea of we don't talk about sexual assault happening within the context of a friendship, happening within the context of a relationship. When you see it on TV or it's discussed in public settings, generally the scenario is, you know, in a dark alley with a knife to your neck. Like, that's normally how people think about sexual assault occurring. But the reality is that way more than 50% of all sexual assault and sexual abuse occurs within the context of a relationship, be it a family member, a friend, someone you're dating. It's really common, but we don't talk about it that much, and so we don't know. It's harder to recognize, it's harder to realize, and it's harder to try to be on the lookout for, right? You're not expecting to protect yourself from someone who you love, from someone who you believe loves you. You're not expecting to have to fight off someone who supposedly cares about you, someone who you've had conversations with, who you've talked to, who you know. We don't think or talk about it happening in these contexts that often, and yet it is by far the most common thing to happen. In a lot of conversations that I've had with fellow victims and fellow survivors, there's this sense that my assault was not significant or severe, it doesn't count because I knew the person, when in reality, the polar opposite is true. If someone has not respected your no, if someone has manipulated you or crossed lines or abused you, that's wrong. End of story, and what you've experienced is legitimate. The second thing that I wanted to address that she said is she talked about being really upset with herself for not fighting back harder and for not having more, what she said in the moment was self-respect. She didn't have self-respect for herself, right?
I really hated myself because of how much I didn't fight and how much I just gave up and how much I actually didn't respect myself in that situation.
These are very common things to feel. These are things that I have felt for a long time. I got really angry at myself. Oh, you know, for the better part of half of a decade, for not fighting back harder, for not knowing what to do in that moment. I should have thought of something. I should have done something. I should have. So many should haves would fly around my brain. Even though I knew it wasn't my fault, I still felt like it was my fault. I still blamed myself. There was something more that I should have done, right? I should have respected myself more in that moment and done something about it. But the problem with that line of thinking, well, one of the problems with that line of thinking is that when it comes to trauma, when it comes to experiencing a life-changing event like that, you are not thinking straight. You are in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. Those are the 4 trauma responses. And the crappy part is that you do not know how you are going to respond. No one can predict how they are going to respond in trauma. You might fight. You might completely freeze. You might become really, really compliant and really loving to try to make it stop, to try to not get further hurt in the situation. You might try to run away. There's a lot of variety within those responses, and none of us know how we are going to respond. When you are experiencing someone attacking you, whether that is by them not respecting your no and doing what they want anyways, or whether it's with a gun to your head, either way, that is an attack. When you are experiencing that, your brain is not functioning the way it normally would. And if you don't respond a certain way, it's not because of a lack of self-respect. You're not having full, thought-out reactions. You're just reacting. You're surviving. You're getting through it. I think that's the reason why the word survivor has become so popular and so important to so many people who have experienced this sort of thing, because you made it through. Your brain and your body got you through this. Even though it was awful, you survived it. You are still here. It is so easy and normal to slip into self-blame, to slip into those thoughts of, I should have done this, I shouldn't have done that, this is my fault because, or it's not my fault, but also here's this other thing that really could have stopped it that I should have known to do. We don't know what we should or shouldn't have done oftentimes until after something has occurred. We can only know what we know when we know it. That's something a therapist told me a long time ago, and I think about it often. I'm aware of so much more, I'm educated so much more than I was when I experienced assault. But I did not know the things that I know now at the time that all of that occurred, and that doesn't make it my fault. If someone violates you, that is 100% on them. That is their fault, that is their responsibility, and that is their lack of respect. That is their crime, that is their action. That's not on you. It's normal to feel like you should have done more and spend a lot of time questioning yourself. It's normal to feel like you should have respected yourself more in that moment, but the reality is, it wasn't you not respecting yourself, it was someone else choosing to disrespect you in such a personal and intimate and horrible way. If you've experienced something like this, like I have, like Jessie has, first of all, I am so sorry. And Jessie, if you're watching this video, I am so, so sorry. No one should ever have to go through these sorts of things. Unfortunately, they do. Sometimes people do really horrible things. And I think it is important that we have these conversations as we're able to openly, because not a lot is known about this. People don't know that it's usually friends and people you're dating and family members who commit these kind of crimes. We spend a lot of time hating ourselves for the reactions that we had in the midst of trauma when our brains were not thinking clear thoughts and when we were in fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which we don't have a lot of control over. I am so grateful that Jessie was vulnerable and chose to tell her story. I have nothing but praise and admiration and compassion. I have not gone through exactly what you have gone through, Jessie, but my heart is broken with you and broken for you. You're strong as hell. You'll get through this, but I know that it's really hard and I know that it's really confusing. And I'm really thankful for your bravery to step up and tell your story to a large audience. That takes a lot. Thank you so much for listening to this video, guys. I truly appreciate your time. I appreciate your listening ears. If you are someone who has gone through something like this, please know that my heart is with you. It's broken with you. And there is a way through this. I know sometimes it feels like there isn't. Sometimes things get really, really dark, but way to go, holding on another day, way to go, waking up this morning. You're a kick-ass survivor, and I'm really proud of you for doing so. I love you guys, I'm thinking about you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.